People need to be safe, and we need to take the right measures to do that, and we're looking at things that have been done around the world, things that have been done in other jurisdictions, looking at the best evidence, the best data, to make the right decisions, to make sure that we are ensuring that our citizens, our communities are safe into the future.
That was Prime Minister Justin Trudeau earlier today at the Danforth Memorial site talking about curbing gun violence. Now, shootings right here in our city have dominated the conversation, most recently at City Hall, where council passed a strategy to curb gun violence. But a group of scholars, artists and activists recently wrote an open letter to city and provincial leaders saying some of these solutions were further isolating some communities.
We saw what the mayor was proposing in terms of responding to gun violence in Black and poor communities, and we felt that the response was deeply inadequate, but we also felt that the response further criminalized these communities, and we felt as responsible citizens, people who reside in the city of Toronto, that we should say something.
The letter was written by a group of scholars, activists and artists addressed to Mayor John Tory and Premier Doug Ford. The authors reference how a number of initiatives the city and province were considering to tackle gun violence will only further, quote, barricade and quarantine Black communities already under economic pressure. On Tuesday, City Council voted in favor of a number of these measures, including 40 new CCTV cameras and audio detection technology that alerts police to sounds of gunshots and the hiring of additional police officers. The authors say when dealing with the city's Black communities, there's a history of hard and deadly policing measures.
The approaches are also approaches that are rooted in the attempt to put a band-aid over a set of problems that are deeper and call for more sustained change and more sustained investment in people and communities.
Right now, 200 police have been put around the streets of Toronto.
What do you think about that?
I think that's excessive. What is that supposed to do? How is that actually working to end whatever issues we have in our city? Let's look at the kinds of policies and the kinds of decisions that are being made in Black communities. The gun violence in Black communities is not endemic to those communities. What's taking place in terms of what is understood as gun violence is really a result of the desperation of these communities, the neglect of these communities, the fostering of violence against those communities, as opposed to recognizing that these communities, like any community, require to be sustainable.
The city will also be pushing the federal government to ban the sale of handguns and introduce tougher screenings. The mayor has also announced additional measures to address the root of gun violence that will look at adding additional community resources and social service supports. A spokesperson from the mayor's office says in a statement, Mayor Tory has been clear in all his remarks that violence in any part of our city is unacceptable, and he has put forward specific actions to combat violence and address root causes of violence through community investments. Around $30 million in community investments were approved by council last week, and the mayor will be relentlessly advocating for the federal government to make these investments. Black advocates are also concerned about the return of TAVIS, an intense community program that was initially introduced to address Toronto's gun problem. At one point during the election, it was supported by Doug Ford, but critics said it only led to carding and racial profiling in communities.
We also have the evidence right here in the city that since 2005 that TAVIS has not worked, and that TAVIS has actually produced more harm in poor and Black communities than good.
What's the solution here?
Well, the solution is certainly the solution is to ensure that we are focusing on creating and putting money into more social, economic, health, mental health, social health, as opposed to using this money for state ammunition.
And we also reached out to Premier Doug Ford, a spokesperson from his office tells City News, and it's important to have these discussions on the wider fight against gun violence, saying, quote, whether the source of the problem is gangs or terrorism or deranged gunmen, the status quo is not an option. Premier Ford campaigned on making more resources available to fight gun crimes and wants to see more boots on the ground and police in our neighborhoods.